Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm the newsman Sam Sachs. And just 5 days into the new Trump administration, and I think we're all fried. Good thing the old Friday is here to rescue us, though, am I right? Huh? Look, I'm trying my best here. Blatantly unconstitutional. That's what a judge in Seattle said about Trump's executive order banning birthright citizenship in the first legal test of the president's most aggressive attack on civil rights so far, less than a week into his administration. Judge John Cogner is a Reagan appointee, but he was shocked by the president's actions here and blocked the order from taking effect. He also reportedly lectured Trump's attorneys in court. The New York Times quoted the judge saying, "I have difficulty understanding how a member of the bar would state unequivocally that this is a constitutional order. It just boggles my mind." Well, these are the lawyers Trump got after his previous one, Rudy Giuliani, was disbarred. So that might explain some things. Ultimately, this is headed to the Supreme Court. The executive order should be quickly dispensed with there, but we have a clown court that's capable of anything. In other news from the Trump administration, the Make America Healthy Again campaign is off to a flying start with a temporary shutdown of public health and medical research agencies just as a dangerous virus spreads. Government-wide order from the president to all executive departments to halt all work and public communications is now having a detrimental effect on the National Institutes of Health's medical research and awarding of grants to develop treatments. One staffer told Science Journal, quote, "The impact of the collective executive orders and directives appears devastating." That also means that agencies are not communicating with the public right now about the risks of bird flu, which is currently wreaking havoc on the nation's poultry supply and poses a risk to the people who work in it. In fact, CDC officials were preparing to publish its morbidity and mortality weekly report that included information on the widening bird flu outbreak. But this week's publication is now held up due to Trump's order. Turning to the United States Senate, Fox News host Pete Hegseth is on the verge of being confirmed as the next Secretary of Defense. On Thursday, Republicans cleared the last hurdle before a final vote on Hegseth can be held, perhaps as soon as today. Every Democrat voted against Hegseth, and 2 Republicans also voted no on the cloture vote to end debate. Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski said that they couldn't support Hegseth due to his lack of qualifications and troubling past. But with Republicans holding a 53-seat majority in the upper chamber, Hegseth could afford a few defections. And as of right now, he still has the votes. Party leadership has plugged its ears and plowed forward with confirming Hegseth despite a number of revelations in the past week that confirm prior reporting on Hegseth's abusive nature and excessive drinking, including an affidavit claiming Hegseth's ex-wife feared for her safety, and an admission from Hegseth that he paid $50,000 to the woman who accused him of rape to keep her quiet. Now, sure, Trump could have picked literally anyone else for this job and not had to deal with any of this, but few are willing to suck on Trump's wingtips like Hegseth. As he made clear in his confirmation hearing, Hegseth would order the military to shoot American protesters if Trump asked him to. Real sick shit. And finally, an executive order signed by Donald Trump this week orders the release of all files the government possesses on the JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King Jr. assassinations. Fairly surprising move, in a good way. Here's the relevant part from the order. Quote, "The continued redaction and withholding of information from records pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy is not consistent with the public interest, and the release of these records is long overdue. And although no act of Congress directs the release of information pertaining to the assassination of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I have determined that the release of all records in the federal government's possession pertaining to each of those assassinations is also in the public interest. Now, the order does leave some wiggle room. It doesn't immediately require disclosure, just that the Attorney General and the Director of National Intelligence present a plan within 15 days to release the files. Again, a plan to release, not the release. Senator Chuck Schumer responded to the news by calling on the president to release the UFO files next. Of course, what the people really want is the Epstein files released, but I can understand why Trump would want to keep that stuff under wraps. Anyway, as always with Trump, there are trade-offs. We're going to get an upswing in neo-fascism, accelerated climate change, and widespread corruption. But also, we might finally find out who or what killed JFK. A purge of civil servants is underway under the guise of combating DEI programs. All references to diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts across the government have been taken down. And according to a memo from the Office of Personnel Management, all federal workers involved in DEI projects had to be placed on leave by 5 p.m. Wednesday. DEI programs have been around for decades, both in government and in the private sector. They work to discourage discrimination and promote diversity. And while critics say that they are race-based programs, they're actually not. Often DEI initiatives aim to give opportunities to groups that are typically shut out, including women and people from rural areas and military veterans. It is true that often liberal attempts to achieve diversity are cringe and that corporations have often used their diversity efforts to deflect from unethical and outright criminal activity. But just because something is misused or exploited doesn't mean it's inherently harmful. And when it comes to the workplace, diversity training is the least of the bullshit that people have to deal with from their boss. It's only in the last few years, amid a reactionary upsurge in our politics, culture, and media, that DEI programs became controversial, similar to how gender-affirming care suddenly became controversial. And DEI has now become a convenient catch-all term for the right in their bid to reduce the influence and power of all marginalized groups in American society. The elimination of these programs will produce higher rates of unemployment among these groups and more instances of discrimination in the workplace. And when it comes to government workers, the Trump administration knows it's unlikely to find ideological allies within DEI programs. So by purging them, those civil servants can later be replaced by bureaucrats loyal to Trump. If this sounds familiar, it's identical to plans laid out in the far-right's Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation's blueprint for a far-right makeover of the country. It includes a section on eliminating all DEI programs and staff within the government. It even called for the Department of Justice to prosecute individuals involved in DEI programs for practicing discrimination against white people. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but Trump's new department and agency heads are encouraging workers to snitch on each other. Department-wide emails were sent to staff telling them to report any secret DEI efforts within the government. Those emails read, quote, "There will be no adverse consequences for timely reporting this information. However, failure to report this information within 10 days may result in adverse consequences." Pretty clear now that the backlash against DEI is going to be more threatening to the working class than DEI itself ever was. Billionaires, they just cower in fear anytime they hear that music. They know it's coming. It ain't good for them. Time for our weekly sniper shot in the class war. Let's get right to it. This week's Rich Dick is Sam Altman. Altman is the artificial intelligence hype man of our time. He's the CEO of OpenAI, which created ChatGPT, and he's turned himself into a billionaire selling this idea of generative AI or superintelligence, the notion that machines will soon outperform even the most genius humans in every field, unlocking scientific breakthroughs. Now, so far, all AI has produced is machines that can do people's homework and a search engine that is 10 times more energy intensive than normal Google search. Oh, and a bunch of really shitty art and clumsily written articles. And serious AI researchers think most of what Altman is selling is hype. The group AI Impacts conducted a poll of researchers in the field, and only 10% believe that in the next few years, AI will surpass human performance in most fields. But investors are banking on Altman being right, that AI superintelligence is within reach. Capital injections in companies developing machine learning capabilities are nearing $1 trillion. And now Altman has positioned himself at the top of a sweeping new AI venture spearheaded by the President of the United States. Altman will oversee operations at the recently unveiled $500 billion Stargate project. $500 billion, you'd think they're building an actual Stargate. But instead, it's a venture bringing together the biggest tech companies to build enormous data facilities all around the country to train computers to do two main things: reduce labor costs for capitalists and create autonomous weapons and surveillance systems. To the ruling class, that's where the ultimate promise of AI lies. The stuff about medical breakthroughs is just to get the public on board. Here was Altman at the White House praising Trump this week and talking about AI's potential in healthcare.
We wouldn't be able to do this without you, Mr. President, and I'm thrilled that we get to. I think it'll be an exciting project. I think we'll be able to do all of the wonderful things that these guys talked about. I believe that as this technology progresses, we will see diseases get cured at an unprecedented rate. We will be amazed at how quickly we're curing this cancer and that one and heart disease, and what this will do for the ability to deliver very high quality healthcare, the costs, but really to cure the diseases at a rapid rate, I think will be among the most important things this technology does.
Oracle's founder, Larry Ellison, who was also at the press conference, is also involved in Stargate, and he was making these claims about AI.
Cancer diagnosis using AI has the promise of just being a simple blood test. Then beyond that, once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically again using AI.
Oh, so vaccines are good again, I guess, huh? A billionaire tech CEO in the Trump White House talking about personalized mRNA vaccines? Where's the outrage from the ivermectin community, huh? But again, this stuff is just marketing, because this was the same Ellison last year talking to a room of class allies, the investors in his company, about the other AI breakthrough he's hoping for, the panopticon.
The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
Well, I don't like that. No one needs that. The only type of person who'd even come up with that are sci-fi writers and oligarchs who don't want to get Luigi'd. This is the hellscape Altman and the other emerging oligarchs in the field are dragging us all into. A future where resistance will be impossible. In a future where, by some estimates, hundreds of millions of jobs will be lost to AI automation. And that means a hell of a lot of profit for the ruling class. But it's money that they're going to have to use to harden their fortresses from climate disasters. Because the data centers that Stargate want to build have enormous energy demands. You got to keep computers running nonstop, performing complex operations. You got to keep fans going to cool them. It's a big, loud fucking mess. According to a Department of Energy report released last December, data centers consumed almost 4.5% of total US electricity in 2023. And by 2028, just 3 years from now, it's expected to grow to as high as 12% of all demand. On a global scale, data centers are adding energy demands equivalent to the demands of entire countries like Japan and Sweden. And in almost every single case, these data centers run on dirty fossil fuels. Altman knows this. He knows the future of his business, of his industry, relies on access to cheap energy. And he's spent millions of dollars donating to politicians in both parties trying to influence energy policy and AI regulation. And that's where Trump comes in. Altman donated $1 million to Donald Trump's inauguration, and here was the president at Davos this week talking about how he's going to ensure that Stargate gets all the energy it needs.
With the AI plants, talking to many people want to build them. That's going to be a very big thing. We're going to build electric generating facilities. They are going to build. I'm going to get them the approval. Under emergency declaration, I can get the approvals done myself without having to go through years of waiting. And the big problem is we need double the energy we currently have in the United States. Can you imagine? For AI to really be as big as we want to have it. So we're going to make it so that the plants will have their own electric generating facilities attached right to their plant. They don't have to worry about a utility. They don't have to worry about anything. And we're going to get very rapid approvals. They can fuel it with anything they want. And they may have coal as a backup. Good, clean coal, you know.
Coal. Fucking coal. So let me get this straight. We're going to blow any chance we have to steer the planet out of a nosedive into climate demise because the ruling class wants to cut labor costs and the national security state wants to trigger an arms race with China. That's what we're going to do. Here's what else Trump had to say about coal at Davos in case anyone was questioning the mental acuity of the new president of the United States.
There are some companies in the U.S. that have coal sitting right by the plant so that if there's an emergency, they can go to that short-term basis and use our very clean coal. So that's something else that a lot of people didn't even know about. But nothing can destroy coal, not the weather, not a bomb, nothing. It might make it a little smaller, might make it a little different shape.
Yeah, sure. I guess that's true. If you kept blowing up coal, it would change into smaller and smaller shapes. Look, everyone in that room has to realize this guy's a fucking idiot. But as long as he's improving the conditions under which they can make extreme profits, they do not care. Altman posted on Twitter, quote, "Watching POTUS more carefully recently has really changed my perspective on him. I wish I had done more of my own thinking and definitely fell in the NPC trap. I'm not going to agree with him on everything, but I think he will be incredible for the country in many ways." NPC trap? Why are you talking like that? You're almost 40 and you're a billionaire. Not everything is an Elder Scrolls game. Should mention, finally, that Sam Altman's younger sister sued him claiming he sexually abused her. Altman denies it. I haven't looked into the allegation because whether or not it's true, I already know this guy is hellbent on destroying whatever good is left in society. And that's more than enough for Sam Altman to be declared this week's rich dick. Wouldn't be surprised if he's a sick freak, too. Okay, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise from California. It was sent in by Paul in San Joaquin County. Enjoy. Thank you, Paul. Show's over. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Please sign up for Means TV, subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels, and follow us on social media. One day, capitalism will fall. Until then, we're going to be right here. See you next week.